Alright, it's Sunday, April 14th, 2013. It's about 6 in the morning. I'm up here at Jackson's Corner. Gonna walk down to fish Stone Creek here in Huntingdon County. Everybody else is asleep. Like I said, it's about 6 in the morning. Everybody else wanted to sleep in, so I'm gonna come out here and see if I can catch a limit with my fly rod. 9'5" weight. See if I can catch a limit before everybody else even wakes up. We'll see what happens today. Alright, well, my fly rod got all tangled up and my extra leaders are back at the back in town. So I had to switch to my spinning rod. I'm hooked up to my first trout of the day. Little brown trout. It's real tiny. I'm not even gonna keep him. I'm hooked up again. Second trout of the morning. Looks like it might be a rainbow. Yeah, that's what it is. It's a real little rainbow. Alright, I'm hooked up again. This fish just got tangled up in all this brush. Brown trout. That's an alright size one. I might put him on the stringer. Alright, I'm hooked up again. Looks like a rainbow trout. This one's a little bit small. I'm probably going to let him go. No, that's a brown trout. Well, I moved to a new hole downstream at the end of this run right here. I'm hooked up. Don't know what it is yet. Brown trout. Alright, it was only about my second cast in here and I'm already hooked up to a rainbow. Like I said, I already kept my limit today, so I'm just catching and releasing right now. It's not a bad sized fish. It's not a bad fish at all. So get him released and I'll cast back out, see if I can catch any other ones. A couple casts later, I'm hooked up again. Looks like it might be a brown trout. Yeah, it's a brown trout. About the average size we've been catching all weekend, so I'll get him off the hook and see if there's more fish in here. A couple of casts later, I'm hooked up to a rainbow. He just made a pretty nice jump, but I couldn't get it on film. There he goes again. Pretty small fish though. That one might not even be legal size. Get him released and keep fishing. Still fishing this bend through here on Stone Creek. There's a lot of people walking up on the road looking at the creek, but nobody's really down here fishing with me. And obviously it's good fishing because this is the third fish I've caught since I got here. A couple casts later, I'm hooked up again to what looks like a pretty decent sized rainbow. Never mind, it was just optical illusion. About average size of what we've been catching all weekend. Get this one released too and keep fishing. Well, I switched up my rig a little bit. I added a float because the water levels come down since yesterday and I was getting a lot of snags. And just caught a nice little brown trout on a wax worm. I've caught all these fish on wax worms and butter worms. Same stuff I was using yesterday. They seem to be working pretty well. Get this guy unhooked and keep fishing. Well, I threw on a butter worm and next cast I'm hooked up again. Looks like it might be a rainbow. It's kind of hard for me to tell. No, if it's a brown trout. It's not a bad fish. Get him released and I'll keep fishing. Not even 2 casts later, I'm hooked up again. Little rainbow trout. on a waxworm. He just jumped. This is my 7th fish since I got here to this bend. It's not a bad trout. Alright, I'm hooked up again. Looks like another brown trout. Caught it on a waxworm under a float. Still fishing the same spot here. I believe this is my 9th fish since I got here. I moved downstream a little bit and I'm hooked up again to a brown trout. This is just kind of boggling my mind for as much fishing pressure as this stretch has had over the past couple days. And I was up here last night putting some pressure on it, but I'm still pulling fish out left and right now on waxworms and butterworms. So I'll get this trout released and I'll keep fishing. Still have the whole stretch to myself all the way down along the wall, which is where I'm heading next. So I just want to take a second away from fishing here and talk about my rig that I've been using to catch all these fish on so far. I got my 4.5 foot ultralight. I broke my 6.5 foot ultralight rod yesterday, so I've been using this. This is my backup rod. I'm using 4-pound test mono, and on the end I have a size 12 hook, bait holder hook with a waxworm or a butterworm. I've been going between the two. I've got about 1 split shot or 2 depending on the current speed. And then recently, to catch those last couple fish, I've added a float up here probably about 3 feet above my hook. And the reason I do that, it's not so I can see if a fish hits. I don't need it for that. Obviously you can feel on the line. It's not like a bob or anything. The reason I'm using this is because it allows you to get a drag-free drift through the creek. You know, when you cast out with just weight and a hook, your line does all kinds of crazy things with the current and it gets a lot of drag, and your drift usually isn't all that good. The float allows you to get a completely drag-free drift, and especially after these fish have seen a lot of bait from yesterday being opening day, if you can get perfect drifts at the exact speed of the current like you can with using a float, a lot of times that's all it takes to start catching a bunch of fish like I have been. So that's been my rig for today. Like I said, I just added the float for those last 5 or 6 fish, but it's shaping up to be a pretty good day. It's still beautiful out. It's only about 1:30 in the afternoon and I still have this little stretch to myself. Kind of mind-boggling for as many people as been driving through on the road that I still have this to myself, but I'll keep fishing. And just more fish for me if there aren't more people out here, so we'll see how many more I can catch today. Well, I moved upstream about 10 feet, and my first cast after talking about the rig that I'm using, hooked up to a little rainbow. Get him released and keep fishing. Well, I moved upstream a little bit and hooked up again. Looks like it might be a rainbow trout. Yeah, that's a rainbow. So I'll get him released and keep fishing in through here. 2 casts later, I hooked up again. This one looks like a real little rainbow trout. I don't even think that one's legal size. So get it released, keep fishing. I moved to a new spot downstream. I'm hooked up what looks like a rainbow. Pretty decent fish. It'd be a good keeper if I didn't already have my limit today. So I'll get him released and see what else I can catch. Well, I moved even farther downstream to this spot in through here. I'm hooked up to a rainbow. Caught him on a butterworm. Get him released and keep fishing. That's my 22nd trout of the day. I caught 8 this morning, and then I came back up here and I started catching a bunch of these fish, and I have the whole creek to myself pretty much. Nobody out here is fishing right now. I'm not really sure why. It's about 3 o'clock on a gorgeous Sunday, but I'll take it. I'm still catching fish and then I don't have to deal with the people, so we'll see what else I can catch. Maybe I'm going to move on to a new section of stream here in a little bit. Well, I moved back up along the wall where I started yesterday. Second cast, I'm hooked up. Little brown trout. Get him released and I'll try to get after this Palomino that's in here. I'm hooked up to a monster Palomino right now. I really hope I don't lose this fish. It is massive. Alright, well, it's about 6 o'clock in the afternoon now. Took that Palomino down to the taxidermist to get it dropped off while the color was still good and everything on that. Didn't get really good footage on that. I was really concerned with landing the fish. And towards the end, whenever I went to net it, there's really no footage of the fish because I was holding my rod and my camera in the same hand while I was trying to net the fish. So the camera was pointing wherever the rod was, which was away from the fish. I was trying to net it. But that's my biggest Palomino to date. And I just missed a fish down in here. I'm back at that bend that I did pretty good at earlier today. And I did pretty good at it last night too. Well, my second cast since I got up here and I'm hooked up. Little brown trout. Get him released and get my line back in the water. Alright, I'm hooked up again. A couple casts later. This fish took a butterworm. Looks like another brown trout. It's not a bad fish. Get him back in and keep fishing. Hooked up again. This looks like a rainbow trout. I only cast about 5 feet in front of my feet that time. Oh no, never mind, that's a brown trout. Pretty little one. Well, I was over there on that side of the creek by that orange tape. Came over here, I'm working my way down along the wall that I started at opening morning, and I caught that Palomino from today. And I'm hooked up to a fish on a butterworm. Looks like a brown trout. Yeah, that's a brown trout. So I'll get him released, get baited up, and keep fishing my way back down the wall to my truck.